Hey, Crosspoint Hutch. Shane Marks, pastor here at Crosspoint Hutch, and just wanted to take a moment and talk to us about something that's coming up for us regarding deacons. Many of you gathered at our prayer and worship night just a few weeks ago at the beginning of August, and I got to introduce to you three potential deacons, and I gave everyone who was there. I said, "Hey, you got 2 weeks to let us know. Do you see any reason why these three people do not qualify to be deacons biblically?" Okay, remember, it's all about the Bible. So it's not that you don't like how they dress or the car they drive. It's that biblically speaking, do they qualify as deacons? And well, I'm happy to report to you that 2 weeks is up, and we have no one reported to us any reason biblically why these three people should not be deacons. And so we're going to be introducing these three deacons to the church at a weekend service here coming up. But I just thought I'd take a moment to some of you don't care. You're like, okay, great, deacons. But I know some of you actually care about, okay, what are deacons? What do they do? What are their qualifications? And so I thought I'd just take a few minutes here to outline some of that for you if that's you. If you're saying, hey, Shane, tell me more about this deacons. So first of all, what are deacons? Well, deacons are one of the offices of the church. If you read the Bible in the New Testament, the Apostle Paul in 1 Timothy chapter 3 gives some qualifications for two offices of the church: elders, which we call pastors, and then deacons. And so deacons, the qualifications are start in verse 8. Things like they must be dignified, okay, respectable. It says they shouldn't be double-tongued, which means they should be honest. They shouldn't be addicted to much wine, which means they shouldn't get drunk and have that as a habit or ever, really. Not greedy for dishonest gain, which means they shouldn't love money to the point where they're lying to get more of it. So things like that. You can read that in 1 Timothy 3, chapter 3, verse 8. So the qualifications are listed for us. Now, what do deacons do? Well, elders, pastors, like myself, we lead the church, okay? We're in charge of teaching the church, leading the church, casting vision for the church, making sure we're going in the right direction. And we have those pastors here on staff at Crosspoint Hutch. Deacons do not lead the church. Deacons serve the church. They serve the church in very practical ways. So they could serve the church in visiting those in the hospital. They could serve the church by counseling those who are married or singles. Or they could serve the church by decorating the church. They could serve the church by planning events. There's lots of different ways that deacons can serve the church, but they serve the church in very specific capacities. So elders, pastors, lead the church. Deacons serve the church in a specific capacity. So that's what they do. Their qualifications are listed in 1 Timothy 3, verse 8 and following. Now, the question, I want to end with this. The question I get a lot, depending on how you were raised and what church you were raised in, the question I get a lot is, can a woman be a deacon? Right? That's kind of the big question a few people may have. So let me just say this. There are great Christian men and women throughout the world who land and they say, no, women cannot be deacons. The Bible does not allow that. There are great Christian men and women in churches and denominations around the country, around the world, who would be on the other side that say, yes, women can be deacons. So let me tell you where Crosspoint lands and why we landed there. First of all, elders, pastors. We believe that, and we'll explain this later, but in another time. But pastors, elders, we see clearly in 1 Timothy 3 that those should be men. But deacons, can they be women? Well, we say at Crosspoint, yes, they can be. A woman can fulfill the office of a deacon for three reasons. Number one, in 1 Timothy chapter 3, you'll read it. Depending on the version you'll read, they're going to talk about deacons' wives, or some versions translate it women. Because the word in the Greek actually in 1 Timothy chapter 3 is actually the Greek word for a woman. And so some versions translate it wives, some versions translate it women. And so we actually think that is better translated by saying women deacons, here's your qualifications. Romans chapter 16, the Apostle Paul is writing, and he actually mentioned a woman named Phoebe and says she is a servant. Now the word servant there is diakonos, deacon. He uses the word deacon to talk about the servant there in that church, Phoebe. And the third reason is, like I've already said, elders lead the church. And we see biblically from Genesis all the way through the end of our Bible that those should be qualified men who lead the church. Deacons, however, they don't lead the church. Deacons aren't teaching. In fact, the qualification for a deacon, they don't need to teach. That's not a qualification for them. But deacons do not lead the church. Okay, so deacons serve the church in a specific capacity. So just like we would allow a woman to serve at the front door and greet people, or serve with our kids, or serve in any, or lead worship on the stage, we see that deacons being servants of the church. There's no reason biblically why that shouldn't happen. So we land here that women can be deacons. The office of elder, pastor, is reserved for biblically qualified men, and the office of deacon can be open to a woman for, serving in that role. So just wanted to outline that for you and give you why we've studied this long and hard. This is where we land, and we want to follow our Bibles. We love our Bibles. And so we'll be introducing our 3 new deacons to you coming up, and we'll be training even some more this fall, and looking forward to having them introduced to you later in 2022. Okay? I love you, Crosspoint Hutch. We love our Bibles. Study it well, because it guides us and leads us in all areas of our life.